In this tutorial, we're going to examine how to use labels within Gmail to help you organize your email. When people first move from other email systems and clients, they may be a little confused by Google's use of labels rather than folders. People are used to the folder metaphor, and they're used to the connection with the physical and the real world, that we take an item and we file it away in a folder. So when it comes to labels, they ask the question very often, why labels and not folders? And the answer is a relatively straightforward one. It is non-exclusivity. Oh, simple, you say. Well, let me explain that. When you use the folder metaphor is exclusive. That is, if I take a message and I file it away in my Chinook folder, that's where it can reside. It can't reside anywhere else. So if it were also related to my eTeam folder, I couldn't put it there unless I created a copy of it, and then we've got redundancy issues and duplication. So with labels, it's quite possible, as you see in this first message, to have multiple labels applied to the same message. So now we don't have to make that decision, should that message go into folder A or should it go into folder B. If it applies to both categories, we can categorize it with our labels both ways, and that's a huge asset. Furthermore, we can just click on one of those labels and we can find all of our messages that are tagged with that label. Click on another category and we see all the messages categorized with that label. So it's a very simple way to sort through our documents and not have to try to remember, gee, how did I file that? Which folder did I put it in? So let's have a little look at how to create labels and how to manage with them. So right in here I've got quite a few labels, so I have to click on this and we're going to scroll down to find the bottom of that, and we're going to create a new label, and we're going to call this one. This category is going to be for messages that I send to myself as little reminders. And you can say, well, I could do that on a to-do list, or I could do it in various ways, and that's true. The advantage email has is that I can always go back and retrieve that later on. So I'm going to click on OK to create that label. So now when we look up here, we see that we have a note to self label. We can choose colors for that. So I'll choose a color that I don't have going just yet. Now, once we've created our labels, there's a number of ways to apply them. But before we do that, let's just create a message. So I'm going to send this from my SaskTel account to one of my Gmail accounts. And return to our inbox, and there it is. Now, right now it's not categorized, except that you see I have a filter created that tells me which email address that was sent to. So when I see that cdeabald@gmail, I know by that label that it was sent to that account, just as I know by this Chinook label that it was sent to my Chinook account. So that's one way to use them. But let's say we want to remind ourselves that this is a note to self. In the last few weeks, this is a new implementation. We can take that label and we can simply drop it on the message. So that's one way. We can also manage our labels through the drop down at the top here. But before we do that, we need to mark the emails that we want to have changed. So if we drop this down, we notice that right now it's tagged with these two. They have check marks beside them. If we wanted to change that, we would check that, click apply, and it no longer has that label applied to it. Another thing we can do is use filters to automatically apply labels. So let's see how that's done. We can come up here and click on create a filter. So in this case, I'm going to say that if I send a message from my SaskTel account, and I'll go next step. Now I have a number of things that I can do with this. In this case, we're discussing labels, so I'm going to check apply the label note to self. Now you can see we can delete it, we can make sure it never goes to our spam folder, we can forward it to another email address, we can star it. Starring is another means of organizing your messages. We can mark it immediately as read, or we can skip the inbox and have it archived immediately, so it won't show up in our inbox, but it will be in our list of messages. In this case, we're going to apply that filter or apply that label. Now we also have the choice at this time of also applying that filter to 120 existing conversations. That would be 120 messages that I've sent from my SaskTel account to myself. I'm going to skip that right now. We're just going to create the filter. And if we scroll down to the bottom, here it is. If it's from this address, apply label note to self. Once we've created the filter, we need to test it out. So we're going to go to compose mail. This time we're going to send it from that SaskTel address to, and the subject of So we're going to send that off. We're going to go back to our inbox, and there it is immediately applied with the label. So those are a couple ways that we can use labels and filters to organize our email within Gmail.